Welcome back to RxMuscle's Iron Debate. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'll be the moderator today for this special panel discussion we're going to be having with a superstar group of individuals. Let's start first with all the way on the west coast of California. He is the Arnold Classic champ and the mouth of bodybuilding. I call him Shawn Ray. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome.
Shawn, what are you doing? Are you having like some caviar by the poolside over there?
No, man, I'm waiting for my lunch. I got Benihana's coming up. I'm chilling.
All right, well, on the other side of the country, right north of me in sunny South Carolina, we have my good friend John Romano joining us today.
Hello. Still here.
You're still here, yeah, from early this morning. John and I had a little after hours, and joining us from after hours also is the man with the biggest arms in the world. He's the Guinness Book of World Record holder, Gregg Valentino.
What's going on, guys? Fuck off.
Hailing from just an hour flight from me in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia specifically, we have IFBB Fitness Pro, Nicole Duncan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What's up, guys?
You've definitely made this panel look a lot more beautiful, that's for sure.
Well, thank you.
I mean, we do have Shawn, but you're just a lot better than he is. And of course, the man who made the show happen, who came to me with the idea, hailing from, I don't even know if anyone who lives in Mississippi, you might be the only person in the world, IFBB Pro, Tricky Jackson.
Trickster.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Gone, but not forgotten.
What are you doing in Mississippi?
The missus got a job here in Mississippi and at Mississippi State, so that we load up the truck and we move to Mississippi.
Dave, can you spell Mississippi?
MISSISSIPPI.
All right. I remember that too when we were kids.
Now, Tricky, let me ask you a question. Did they even have any kind of like COVID restrictions in Mississippi, or were you guys immune from it?
You said, did we have COVID? Guy, of course we did. Yes,
no, did you guys have any restrictions there? Because I don't think there was any cases in Mississippi, were there?
Yeah, just like most of the states in the South, things started, ramping up here kind of slowly. But right now, I mean, it's been steadily going up for the last.
Oh, really?
So it's still going up, yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, anyway, Tricky reached out to me, him and Nicole Duncan, and they wanted to do a show. Given what's going on, and we're not going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about racism in America and how it affects the bodybuilding industry as a whole. And I thought it was an important enough. Tyler, can I have a camera on me? Oh, it is. Okay. My screen is not working, so I don't even know. And I thought it was an important enough topic to discuss, and I wanted to get a panel of people that had from all walks of life in our bodybuilding industry to give their experiences and their insights and their opinions on this topic. So we're gonna start with the first question is going to be, number one, do you think racism still exists in this country? If so, where would you rank on a scale of 1 to 10? And then how has racism, if you do believe it exists, has it affected the fitness industry? Since I got Tricky Jackson here, let's start with you first, Tricky.
Okay. Well, my answer to the question is absolutely yes. And if I had to rank it from 1 to 10, I would put it at a 5. I think that it's obviously improved, since the 70s, 80s, 90s. Things are better. But we're still in the middle as far as I'm concerned. I think if you think about the United States as a whole are right now with the states kind of being divided, it's almost down the middle. I feel like it's the same way as far as racism. Now, a lot of people might argue it's a lot of politics to the left and to the right, down the middle, but I think racism falls right along in there with the politics of it all.
What's been your experience with racism?
I've had a couple different experiences. I remember as a college student being pulled over by police officers because I fit a description of a black man that robbed a gas station. So I was pulled over coming back from I was in college at the time. I was coming back from a co-op job on my way back to campus, and I was pulled over. The police officer opened the door, gun drawn.
Whoa.
And the guy didn't say a word to me, looked in the car, jumped in his car, and he drove off.
Okay.
White officer.
Really?
And, you know, I'm 19, 20 years old. I'm scared to death. I sit there for 10 or 15 minutes not knowing what to do because the officer didn't say a word to me. So I finally get myself together, and I start to drive, you know, close the door, start to drive, and I get pulled over a second time.
Holy shit.
Same thing. Pulled over and gun drawn. And this guy actually came from across. I was going down one way on the highway, and he was coming the other way. I saw the spotlight hit me. He came across the median, turned up behind me, and he pulled me over. Same exact thing happened. Finally, I get back into town where I go to school, and I'm pulled over a third time. This time they get me out the car. They actually kind of explain to me what's going on. It makes perfect sense to me once it's explained to me, but the first two parts of the experience were terrifying for me. And,
right.
You know, that's just one example that I can think of. And I'm not going to necessarily say that was a racist situation, but that was one of the, you know, bad experiences I had from the standpoint of police officers.
But no, that you weren't mistreated in any way, were you?
I mean, if you consider I had a gun drawn.
I understand, but I'm saying no one, like, you didn't get hit or no nastiness said to you or anything like that, right?
Say that again, Dave.
Did anyone say anything nasty to you, or were there any racist comments made to you, or anything like that?
No, there weren't.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Nicole, let's go to you next. Nicole, first of all, do you believe that racism still exists in this country, or is it overblown? And what's been your experience with it, if it has?
I absolutely think that racism still exists in this country. I just think it doesn't come in a white sheet anymore. You know, it's not blatant. You know, it used to be back in the day, people, you know, would call you names or say shit to your face. But now it comes in different forms. It comes in more so our, you know, preconceived notions of people. You know, I live in the South, and so it's still very. And so what happens is you run into people who don't have experience. Like we're I would say blessed to have the bodybuilding community because we are a diverse community. We do deal with people from other countries, from all races, from all backgrounds. But here in the South, for sure, it's absolutely alive and well. And I know Tricky said a 5. I would say like a 7 at least, just from what I've seen. And, you know, I live down here where the Ahmaud Arbery thing happened where, you know, a kid, you know, gets cornered by, you know, 3 guys in 2 pickup trucks and shot on the road. And one of the guys is actually filming the shit, you know, and goes home and thinks nothing of it. And until this video gets out, you know, from one of the actual perpetrators, you know, nobody knew about it. And the guy was literally just running down the street. So it may not be the same in different parts of the country and how it's portrayed, but absolutely, you know. And then, of course, the thing with the guy at Wendy's, which is controversial. I see both sides of that story. But yeah, it's absolutely.
What's been your experience, Nicole, with racism? Have you ever had anything that done to you that where you felt like you were being, you know, racially, discriminated against, or people were saying anything that was racially, you know, targeted at you?
I've always been pretty vocal and pretty strong. And I'll say this, I've always conformed. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, I'm wearing braids now, but like, I always straighten my hair. Most people thought I was a mixed kid. You know, I was always a cheerleader. I was a homecoming queen, those kind of things. Like I dealt in, I could walk the walk in different circles. So, but on my brother, on the other hand, same mom and dad, same household. He's actually smarter than me, got pulled over multiple times, you know, shit like that. I will say that I appreciate my fair skin in a lot of those ways, and being a woman, I would say too.
Let's go to you, Shawn Ray. You have very strong opinions, as we know, on most topics. You grew up, obviously, you're a little older than Tricky.
A little older?
No, you've obviously been in our industry for a very long time. You played sports in school. What's been your experience with racism in America, and how has it affected you, if at all?
I only had one experience that I might have talked about it twice. In high school, and probably because the way it rolled out, I didn't let it digest and affect my outlook on it. My senior year in high school, and mind you, I played football for 3 years and was the MVP, and I started my bodybuilding. But by the time I was a senior year, going into the beginning of my senior year, my locker was vandalized. It had the N-word written across it.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was coming back to school on a Monday, so we knew that then it happened on the weekend, and obviously in the 80s, there were no cameras at the high schools. Not a big deal, but I went to the office on the Monday, came back with the principal, showed them my locker. They said they would clean it up, and then he brought me in and said, hey, listen, why don't you if you don't have a problem with having your home base out of the home office, we'd love to have you in here. I was lobbying to try to be the morning announcer, do the morning announcements. First 15 minutes of school was morning announcements.
Trying to get a job already, even in high school.
Yeah, and I wanted it. And I wanted it. My buddy worked there. And so they allowed me an extra 5 minutes to get to my class, every single class. Right. They allowed me to go to the office and had a little cubicle to get my books, just walk in, change books, and walk back out. So I was late at literally every one of my classes because I had this extra 5 minutes of time that the principal allowed me. So a lot of those guys thought I was getting special privilege because I was the star football player,
right?
And the wannabe bodybuilder. I was like the only one, so I was kind of a unicorn. But I had this little. The other students thought I was special in that regard, but it all emanated from somebody wrote the N-word on my locker. The principal was very respectful of that and allowed me to do the morning announcements. And I actually liked going to the office to do those morning announcements. It didn't bother me. It didn't affect me. We never found out who the hell did it. But it was, you know how many kids were in my school? There was 3 black guys, like in my graduating class.
Oh, wow.
My locker was targeted. Now, it's the N-word. The N-word is in rap music. The N-word was being thrown around in my house. The N-word is being thrown around all around me. You're hearing it. But when you see it on public display, it's not meant in a loving way. It's not in a song, right? It's not in a music video. It is direct, and it's coming from a place of hate. Never found out who that was. I grew up here in Orange County. I live right now, and if you can Google it while you guys are doing nothing, I live in the safest city in America for the past 14 years, city of Irvine. There's nothing happening here. So when I'm watching the news and I'll see what's going on in Atlanta, see what's going on in Seattle, in Minnesota, it looks like a whole nother country, but it's here in America. On a level of 1 to 10, right now, racism is a hot topic. It's probably an 8. It's probably an 8 as far as talking about it now.
Wow.
You know why? We're in the digital age. We're capturing all of these things. Right. And if you click on one situation like Ahmaud Arbery in Atlanta, it'll take you down and you can stay up all night seeing very similar cases where it's white on black crime by these rogue cops. It's not something that's new. It's getting exposed now because of the digital age. Think about what was happening before the cameras existed. I mean, it was probably even worse. Now there's some accountability. It hasn't come to my home, my doorstep. But having 2 daughters that are 14 and 12, in 10 years, my daughter could marry one of those guys that are living in Atlanta right now, that are living in Minnesota right now, that are living in Seattle right now, and they're going through that oppression, and they're going to bring their life experiences into my house, and those are going to be shared with my daughters, and I'm going to have to deal with what those kids came up with. All it takes is 1 or 2 bad encounters with the cops to just totally change your opinion on them. I got a lot of friends that are cops, so I heard both sides of the stories. No, I've never been arrested. I was detained once when I was a kid stealing light bulbs and throwing them out in the street, but that was the whole neighborhood that got busted. Thank God I had 2 parents that kept me on the straight and narrow, so I don't know what it's like to be arrested. I don't know what it's like to be put in the back of a squad car and be roughed up in that situation by the grace of God. But with my age, I see it playing out. I see it happening. I'd be blind if I didn't speak out on how brutal some of these cops are when they come running up with the gang mentality. They already got the suspect apprehended, and they jump in and they kick him in the head or drop the knee on him or drop the elbow. And it's like, growing up watching cops on television and LAPD Live, I used to love that show. I look at it totally different now because some of these guys they're minding their own business. This guy that was drunk in the parking lot, I mean, he winds up dead as a result of a DUI. It should never get to that point. Yeah, we shouldn't fight the cops. Well, it should have never gotten to the point where he had to fight the cops. They didn't even ask him for his driver's license.
Right.
So I'm not jaded by what's happening in America. I am pro-reform. I don't think we should defund these guys, but reform. And I also don't believe these cops should have 30-year tenures, because if they're asshole cops the first year, they're going to be real assholes by the time they're 30 years in, and it's going to be systemic of spreading it to the rookies coming in. My classic example, and I'll let you have it. The movie Training Day, Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke. If you haven't seen it, to me, it's a classic example of a good cop coming into a bad situation with seniority cops trying to bully him into being a bad cop.
Right.
And Ethan Hawke did everything he could do to be a good cop, but the numbers were against him. The seniority was against him. There was zero checks and balances for that good cop to even survive. And I think that was indicative of a lot of what's going on in America, is that you got bad cops corrupting good cops, zero accountability, and their crimes or their punishments never fit the crimes that they inflict on us. And that's what we want. We want those cops to be punished when they're bad.
Right. John, let's go to you. Is there racism still in America, and or is it being blown out of proportion, because of the couple of incidents that have come to light recently? I know you have a strong opinion on this.
I don't know, of this panel here, it's only the 3 white guys that have been to prison.
That's true.
Statistics.
It's true.
Statistics are against you.
That's right.
How was it?
It's wonderful. So, bodybuilding, I'm going to preface that by supporting bodybuilding for a minute. One of the things I love most about bodybuilding is that, to me, from a very early age through my whole career in bodybuilding, I always felt bodybuilding was the least racist or least race-infused pursuit that you could have. I mean, competition day, we're all dyed the same color. So, I mean, I
agree.
Which and I've never experienced any racism, or witnessed any racism at all in bodybuilding in the 35 years that I've been involved with it. I will say that we are human, and we are always, no matter what we do, no matter what punishments are in place, no matter what education is in place, no matter what philosophies or ideologies are in place, we are always going to have murderers. We are always going to have rapists. We are always going to have embezzlers. We are always going to have crooked lawyers and crooked politicians, and we're always going to have racists. Some of those racists are going to end up wearing a cop uniform. And as much as we want to try to control it and not make it happen and eliminate it, it's always going to be there because it's human nature. And so you got to kind of determine what's tolerable, even though none should be tolerable. It should be tolerated. But for example, we all know planes crash, right? And we all have no problem getting on an airplane, knowing they crash, right? But how often do they crash? How safe do you think air travel is? 99.9%? If it was 99.9% safe, we'd have 6 crashes a day. So what's acceptable? There's always going to be plane crashes. Always. They're never going to eliminate them. There's always going to be plane crashes. Can we mitigate them? Yes. Can we do that with racism? I don't know. It's ingrained in the human psyche that we mock what we don't understand. We tend to group together towards similar people. We tend to ostracize what's not common. And that's the way human nature is. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the mitigation process is. All I know is you're never going to get rid of it. And as sad as that is, it's the truth. It's the way it is.
Let me say something real quick to your point. In your airplane analogy, the only thing I would add would be, if the plane is crashing and it's a direct result of the pilot that's different from if it's a mechanical error. If it's based on the pilot, then there could be some problem there with the training. So, I have to think that if you apply that to police officers, same thing with the training. Something has to change, because if I, going to get on a plane and the pilot has had numerous, write-ups, I'm going to have a problem getting on that plane if I know that. And I think that if the system knows this pilot has issues, then there's got to be guidelines to say, well, this guy shouldn't be flying anymore.
Right.
Look, that makes sense to what I'm saying.
You're absolutely right about that. And there's, I go back to when I was a kid growing up on Long Island. The cops were brutal. I've gotten beaten up by the cops. I can't even tell you how many times.
Me too.
They would toss us, right? They would toss us a beating. They would toss us a beating any day of the week, And back then, cops were badass. They were tatted up, muscled, big, mean motherfuckers. Okay. Now you got cops that were the kid beaten up in high school. He's like 4'2". Now he's got a gun and handcuffs and a badge, and now he's going to try to exert his power that he didn't earn. Okay, so Tricky, you got an excellent point, but it's so much broader than training. It's who we choose. It's who ends up getting into this. And man, I am all for, Shawn, you're so right, reform. I think reform has to cover the recruitment process, who you choose as cops, the psychological process, a whole bunch of shit, because you've got to go back to when you were a kid. When I was a kid, I was terrified of my father. Right. He never killed anybody, but I was terrified of him, okay? We were terrified of the cops, not because they killed anybody, but because it was authority, and you respected authority. I was taught you respect authority. When the cop tells you, keep your hands on the wheel, let me see your license, I am yes, officer, no problem. I am not saying, why did you pull me over? You don't have the right to pull me over. I'm going to get you. No, you got to respect authority. And I don't mean being afraid of the cops like you are afraid they're going to kill you, but you need to, when you were a kid, I was afraid of my father because of his authority, because of his, and that's the element that's missing. These people today have no respect for authority at all.
So, John, putting aside the cops, do you feel that there's racism still prevalent in our country?
Yes. As long as there's humans, there's going to be racism. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Greg, let's go to you, Greg. I haven't heard you.
Where's John at on that scale of 1 to 10?
What's your 1 to 10 here?
Tricky, that's a hard question for me to answer because I don't experience it. So, I mean, I don't know. Is it there? Yes. Is it? I mean, I'll say 50%. I defer to your experience. I'm white. I can't answer that question.
And just to your point, Tricky, I said it was an 8 today. Like right now, it's a hot topic. Yeah. Because we're all talking about it. All eyeballs are on it. I would go probably 50-50 too. I'd say it's a 5. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff. You're talking people that are losing jobs and people that are losing their homes. There's so many other broader things. Race is right in the middle along with the rest of them. It's just a hot topic today.
Greg?
Yeah.
Let's go to you.
Personally, some of this shit, I got to tell you. First of all, I've gotten my ass kicked by cops, and the last cop that beat my ass was black, and he fucking hit me so many times in the head with his fucking gun barrel that he was stopped by another cop. This is when I got arrested. Later on, when I was sitting in jail, I'm going, fuck, why am I so sore on the side of my head? I forgot that it was from him. But you can't put all cops. If you say cops are bad, that's like saying black people are bad. You can't do that. And my children, I was married to a girl who was mulatto, half black, half white. My children are descendants of slaves. My ex-wife's father was a grandson of a slave. Okay, he was 70 years old in 1963. So his grandfather was born into slavery in Georgia, and I love my children. My girlfriend's Mexican immigrant, so I have no, you know what I mean. I don't give a shit. What I'm trying to say is that you can't put everybody in the same group. Today, is racism alive? Fucking A, right, it is alive. And I think Everybody hates everybody. Asians hate fucking blacks. Whites hate Asians. We're black and white. Fucking Spanish and this and it's all, dude. Everybody. It's separatism. Yeah. And I have black friends. Like I love Shawn Ray. Okay, I'm not just saying this, but Shawn, you and I have always gotten along. I don't think of Shawn Ray. If I say Shawn Ray's my friend, I don't say Shawn Ray's my black friend. I say Shawn Ray's my friend. I don't even think of him in that way or any of that. And I think that's part of the problem is that we shouldn't, I don't think that we should be, thinking like that. I do believe that cops, I think cops are good, but I do think there's a lot of bad cops. I've had them fucking do shit to me. And those bad cops, I agree with John. I said it a long time ago. A lot of guys grew up that I knew that were pussies in high school. They got a badge and a gun, and now they're fucking Billy Badass. Meanwhile, the guys who did get on a job maybe, and they weren't pussies in high school, maybe played football or whatever, most of them are the guys that are the good cops. They don't have anything to prove. But do I think that cops target black people? Yeah, I do. I do believe that. I believe black cops target black people. And I also believe you cannot, listen to what I'm going to tell you, because I think this is the most important thing. You cannot have white cops policing black people in a black neighborhood.
I agree.
You can't get some fucking guy that grew up in a suburb of New York, grew up over here like Westchester County.
Huge problem.
Are you there?
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going, Greg.
You can't get a guy that grew up in Westchester County and now he's going to be a cop in fucking Harlem or Washington Heights. You can't do that. They don't know that neighborhood. They don't know the mindset. You need cops from that neighborhood to police those people.
I agree. That would help a lot.
You have to have the police from that neighborhood. You live in Mississippi. You live in that city in Mississippi. You should be a resident, somebody who grew up in that city, and that's who should be policing those people.
So to your point, Greg, I used to live in Corona, a small city called Eastvale. The majority of Eastvale was full with LA County cops. That means they have to drive 45 minutes to an hour to go into the jungle to work an area that has economic strain and all kind of homeless people. And so I imagine like getting ready for a football. We all wrestled or we played football. As you get prepared and you're putting on your cleats and you're putting on your helmet and your uniform, your mind takes you to this combat type mentality. Well, these cops on that drive into LA are going into the jungle, and then they got to leave that there and try to come home. And that's why a lot of these cops have domestic violence issues, high rate of divorce, because they bring that home and they've been in the jungle all day, and you put them in there for 20 years, it changes you.
Sean, it's like bodybuilding, bro. You give a guy steroids, if he's an asshole and he gets jacked, he's a bigger asshole. All right, how many guys take steroids and walk around and they're not beating people up and they're not doing that shit because they're not assholes? You understand what I'm saying? I feel like you put a badge and a gun on a guy who's got an attitude. Now he's like fucking, yo, bro, fuck you, like they think that they're fucking badasses. Okay, I believe you have to come from that community to police people. You cannot. Can you imagine a white community, an all-white community, which got a lot of scuttle? Okay, can you imagine an all-black police force policing those people? They'd have an attitude about shit.
Yeah.
You have to understand the people that you're working with. And you know what? You can't go through fucking 3 months or 6 months of some bullshit schooling, okay, and be able to carry a gun in a badge.
Yeah. Right.
Meanwhile,
that's crazy.
My accountant has to go to 4 years of college, 2 years of accounting school to do your fucking taxes. You understand? You should have to go to a school, and you can't get a guy who just graduated high school 2-3 years ago, and now he's a cop with a badge and a gun. It's not right, bro. You should be 25 or older, your maturity level. You start getting a guy 20, 21 years old who can barely even go in a bar, and now he's got a badge and a gun. You got to revamp that.
Great point.
That's what I feel.
I agree with Greg 100%. But, I want to say to both you and John is that, I've been having these conversations on social media with different friends and different individuals. And it's amazing to see the number of white people that really think that racism is either non-existent or one or two. And so I know John started off with the preface that he wasn't sure, but he said because he's being a white person, he hasn't experienced it. So he has to go based on what I say and what Rashawn says and what Nicole says. And that's the most frustrating thing when I have these conversations is that they're not listening with eyes open enough to say, look, you haven't experienced it, but we have. We know people have, family members, community members, and we're trying to tell you that it's there, it still exists, and it's out there, but they fall on deaf ears.
They discount it.
Can I say something?
So much frustration.
Wait, I want to tell Tricky something. I want to say something. My ex-wife was mulatto, okay? And her sister was so embarrassed when she was younger as a kid. She used to say, I'm Spanish, because she went to a mostly white school. She didn't want to even admit that she was mulatto, like her father, her father was black, her mother was white. She used to say, I'm Spanish. So I understand all of that. I get it. I've seen shit myself. Even sitting in jail, I noticed the black guys go with the black guys, the Spanish guys go with the Spanish guys, the white guys go with it's there. You know what I mean? It's almost like every group, even Asians, they group together. And I don't know if it's ever going to leave, but I think that we do need to respect each other, and I do believe that we shouldn't look at each other's skin color. And I'm sorry, the one thing you guys might disagree with, but I don't believe in white privilege. I believe in economic privilege. You understand? Look at these football players. They'll beat their girl. Oh, look at Ray Rice. Knocked his wife out in a fucking elevator, dragged her out like a sack of potatoes. If that was you or me or John Romano, any of us, we would get arrested and fucking put in jail. But when
Greg,
you got to start old, what's that?
Greg, well, to your point, Greg, I think the hotbed topic right now is that the cops are not being dealt with for the severity of their crimes. If you punish these cops when they mess up, I mean, it took 2 days to get this guy in jail after he had the knee, right?
Let me
it
took
took 9 days to get the other one.
Let me put a question, guys. Let me put a question out to you guys. Maybe John wants to answer this first because John's a good statistics guy. From what I understand, the statistics seem to point that more white people are being victimized by the cops and killed by the cops than black people, statistically speaking.
That's not even fair.
But it seems as I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying. I'm saying. But it seems as though that a lot of the black incidents with black individuals is being held up as, look at how terrible this is. Is that true? Do people not care if white people get killed by cops as much? What's your take on that, Shawn? Or John?
I think the numbers are listen, you cannot measure what's happening in the world on statistics because we're excluding the Mexicans, the Chinese, and the Japanese. Statistics, we're just talking about black and white.
Well,
what I'm saying is statistically, here's the problem: when you have black on black crime, you're not talking about black cops on black people. When you're talking cop crime on civilians, the cops are supposed to be the educated ones. They went through the training. The cops are the ones that are supposed to exercise restraint and good judgment because they're the ones that are on high alert. You can't call a cop and wind up dead. You can't call a cop on a DUI guy sleeping in the parking lot and you wind up dead. I mean, these cops that are killing people, white and black. I'm saying those are the statistics I want to know about. The black on black crime, the white on black crime. We're talking about police on civilians. Right. If you call a cop, this one guy I saw on YouTube, this one guy called a cop because he needed his meds. He didn't take his meds. He's bipolar, and he's in distress. He calls 911. The cops come out there to see what the guy's problem is. The guy winds up dead because the cops pin him on the ground and choke him out. He was calling the cops for help.
100%. 100% dead on. I agree with that. It doesn't matter.
Greg, let Nicole answer this question.
Take away your color. Take away your skin color. You're right.
Hold on. Yeah, Nicole.
That's why you keep hearing people talk about defunding the police. What they're saying when they say defund the police, they really should word it differently because nobody wants to see no policemen. But when you have people who are trained to handle people with post-traumatic, what is that? What am I trying to say?
PTSD.
People with mental issues, people with, when you've got to have a situation where cops who aren't trained to handle those kind of situations can be called to take care of those people. This all happened, you guys, because there are a number of names of Black Americans who have been killed at the hands of cops. There is video of people actually not having guns, running away. And at the end of the day, people say, well, they should have been doing this or they should have done this. And they're dying. And it makes absolutely no sense. Now, let's take that a step further. They're not just dying. The cops aren't even being charged for it.
That's the problem.
You know, we're talking about George Floyd too, right? So George Floyd, his death has started all of this. So, you know, the cop goes home for a few days. In the same city in Minnesota, the same thing happened. There was a black cop who went and responded to a 911 call. There was an Australian woman who had just moved to that area, who was getting married, getting ready for a wedding. They put his ass in jail like in no time and gave him 12 and a half years. And he was a police officer responding to a 911 call. He fired off a shot. It hit the wrong person. It was unfortunate, very sad. The woman died, but his ass is in jail.
No, she startled him. She startled him. She walked up to and he shot out the window. That was totally reckless. But what I got to tell you is it's not defunding the police. They need more funding. I think they need to go to school a lot longer. I think they need to be older when they start their job. It's not, you're taking away money. You're going to get more shit. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have less police officers and they're going to go lower in the barrel. I think they need to fucking change the way. I'm not anti-cop at all. I'm pro-cop, but I'm anti-bad cop, and I agree with you in that sense. It's like your parents. If your parents fuck you over and they're bad parents, they deserve double the trouble. If a cop fucking violates his oath to serve you, he should go to jail double what
immediately.
Go to jail.
Right.
Yeah, well, you know,
but you can't. But you need more funding. You can't have less funding. How can you make these cops better with less funding? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but you can't use blanket statements like none of them get caught, none of them go to jail, because that's not true.
Right.
There was a guy here there was a South Carolina, it was a famous case, I can't remember the guy's name. He was running away, the cop shot him 9 times in the back. The guy's doing 20 years. Okay? There's also a matter of perspective.
But John, people have a very good memory. You remember 1992. The reason those riots broke out in LA for Rodney King is because we saw him get beat down 52 blows. Absolutely. 52 blows, and they told us that the cops were just doing their job. Well, so it only takes one case like that to light the whole freaking thing on fire.
Absolutely, and it did, and it did, Shawn. It did. You were there. I was there. It did. It lit the whole thing up. But yeah, I think what happens is that tensions get so high by the time these things happen that it turns into you got a powder keg.
But John, what's the answer?
Wait a second, Greg. Wait a second. No, wait a second. You've got last year.
The police was the answer, by the way. I was just bringing that up as
we want more money. We need to put more money into these
guys.
Hold on,
just let John finish, Greg.
You got to put this in a perspective. Okay, last year there were 420 million interactions between the public and the police. 420 million. There's only 330 million people in the whole country, so some people went 6-7 times. Okay, so 420 million interactions with the police and the public. How many unarmed black men were killed by the cops?
If there was more than one, not prosecuted, we have a problem.
Well, not only that, Shawn, and let me start by saying I don't agree with defunding the police. I actually a little bit more along where Greg's saying. I think we probably do need to put more funds into the police department. Again, back for towards training, but if that happens, maybe there needs to be an outside organization that monitors the money that goes in so it makes sure it goes where it's supposed to go and that they're doing what they're supposed to do. At the end of the day, what this is all about is that, and I think we can agree, whether it's black people being killed or white people, there needs to be change in the way the people police our communities. And not just because of blacks, and this is why I think racism keeps coming in, not just because of the number of black men and women unarmed that are killed, but we're negating the fact that black men and women are also targeted and harassed and arrested a lot of times on small things, and then they end up with trumped up charges. And now you got more. Well, there's a reason why there are more black people incarcerated than white, a lot of times those charges are bogus. So that's another thing that we're dealing with. So it's not just the fact that a black individual was killed, but it's also because there's a certain amount of harassment and targeting that consistently goes on in the black community. Now, with that said, to John's point about the blanket statement, I agree with John in that here's what happens. The narrative is always changed because people always want to go to all the way to the right or all the way to the left.
Right.
Which the reality of it is, if you talk about the protesters, they want to change the narrative and focus on looters and rioters when that's a small percentage of the protesters. So now they change the narrative and the message is lost. Back to what the reason was for. Because of the brutality, the harassment that goes on in the black community. That is what it's all about. And unless everyone acknowledges and comes together and say, look, there has to be a change. Well, not just for black people, but for white people in general, white people in addition, in the police department, we have to come together at that. But because we're all to the right or all to the left, it always split down the middle and nothing changes.
So let me give you one analogy real quick, Greg, that I saw that was really interesting to me. You know, John, if you're at a party and you're getting harassed by the cops and you take one of those cops down, I mean, are all those other cops around there, they're on their radios calling in the troops, right? I mean, next thing you know, you look up and there's 20, 30 of them.
Right.
And you're only one person. They called in backup. There's their whole army. And the next thing you know, the cops are there in force, you're taken down, or you may be taken out. Well, here's what happens to the black community. One guy does something, he's taken down and he's taken out, and we watch it with our own eyes. It's an illegal stop, it's an illegal death, it's an illegal shooting, whatever the hell it is. You don't expect all of the community to come after those cops? I mean, this guy's a father, this guy's an uncle, he's a brother. The whole community comes out. So when this guy went down out there in Minnesota, it reminded me of the Rodney King situation. When Trayvon Martin went down, that reminded me of it because what it is these cops keep getting off, and we are tired of seeing these cops getting a slap on the wrist, keeping their pensions, not getting arrested like a normal person would get arrested. There's so many protections for being a bad cop that we are sick and tired of seeing that happen on television and now on social media.
Sean, that's because they police themselves. That's another fucking
That's
thing.
the problem.
You got to understand something. A cop does something, he gets off, he answers to his boys, they sweep under the rug. That's a big problem. You understand? And I'm pro-cop again. I'm not anti-cop. But
I'm pro-cop too. I haven't had an issue with it, but I'm watching it happen. And to sit by and not say something is ridiculous. You know how many people I've had to block and delete because of their stance on these black guys getting killed innocently? Like, where's the argument when a cop kills a black guy and he has no reason for killing him?
It's the quality of the person that gets chosen. Like in a bodybuilding show, you can only judge what shows up, right? You can only hire who applies. You can't decide I want to hire Bruce Lee because he didn't show up, so you're not going to get him. But there's a breakdown. There's a breakdown among men in this country that has been precipitously going downhill for decades now. And I'll go back to my example when I was a kid and the cops used to toss us a beating all the time. Cops were badass in those days. They were. Okay, we don't have that today. We don't have guys coming out of homes with fathers. We don't have guys going into military service for 2, 4, 6 years out of high school. We don't have community respect like we used to back in the old days when
they didn't have cell phones back then.
Well, that's or Snapchat or any of the other bullshit. But but that's what happens. This is so to Greg's point, to Sean's point, to all of your point is that we have got to make better cops out of what's presented to us, people who want to be cops. You can't, if you want to be a cop, you gotta be a certain kind of person. You have to have a certain kind of background. You have to be analyzed and trained. And if you can do that, you have a far better chance of what we're getting today. It's gone downhill. It's gone steadily downhill.
It only takes
a result of that.
It takes one bad experience for one black man running into the cops that abuse him, take advantage of him, humiliate him, for him to then go home, tell his parents, tell his brothers, tell his friends, he will never trust the cops again. That's his one encounter. He's looking for that next time he gets pulled over. And that's where you see these guys mouthing off to the cops. They don't have any respect for the cops. He's making songs saying, fuck the police. I mean, and so you have this mob mentality against the cops. And then the cops feel like they've got to band together to go after these suspects. And you're a suspect before anything else. The Jay Pharoah situation, if the people that are listening and watching right now have not seen the comedian Jay Pharoah walking down the street in Beverly Hills or Hollywood or wherever he was here in LA, and he's profiled, he's taken down, he's handcuffed, the knees on his neck, and he tells them, Google me, I'm Jay Pharoah, I'm not a problem. 5 minutes later, they let him go. But the problem was, why did you have to take him to the ground? Why did you have to handcuff him? Why is he laying in the fucking street? He's a multimillionaire comedian. And when they find this out, they let him go. And that's his experience. So he's on national TV telling his reality. He's got his family to tell that story to. Suddenly you have all these negative opinions of how these cops are treating normal civilians. It's a bad taste in your mouth.
Here, I want to just interject my things. I've been pretty
economics, and I want to get this in real quick. And it's not just economics, Greg. And I say that because you can have an athlete that's an NBA player, NFL player, whatever the case may be. If they're out in the public and they have an altercation with a police officer, that police officer doesn't recognize who they are, the chances are they're most likely going to be just seen as another black guy.
Right, that economics out the window.
Suffer and have.
Yeah,
I've seen
that's
it
true.
happen and seen the video, and it doesn't matter. They're just another black person. And the same thing can happen to them.
I wanted to just give my experience. When I was in my federal little stint of prison that I went to, a lot of guys where I was being held was a very low security facility, and so they call it like a camp. And a lot of the guys who obviously had served many years, when they start getting close to being released, they're put into the camps. And so I was in with a bunch of guys who were drug dealers, and some of them were guys who sold a bag of crack and went to jail for 8 years. Now, 99% of these guys were black. They weren't white, okay? Meanwhile, you have a guy in there who sold 3 kilos of cocaine, which had a street value infinitely more than the little bag of crack, and they were doing less time than the black people who sold a bag of crack. And so I saw, and I talked to these guys, and there was a huge disparity in the way they were handled versus, because, crack was considered a black drug on the inner cities, whereas, white, America uses cocaine. And so I saw that racism firsthand. I was with these guys. I couldn't believe the amount of time that these guys were serving. And they were good. They were not derelicts. They were not like killers. They were not rape. These are just guys trying to make a few bucks, to pay for lunch and dinner and something like that. And I guys doing 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years.
Crazy
I couldn't believe
sentences.
it. It was crazy.
That's the Joe Biden crime bill right there.
So there's definitely discrimination in the legal system. Now, my question to you guys, I'm going to go around the horn, is, the rioting, okay? I believe that 90% of the rioters or the people who demonstrating were peaceful people that wanted to just have their voice being heard and speak up. And I feel that there was an undercurrent behind this who jumped on that bandwagon and turned this violent. What's your take on this? We'll go to you, Shawn, first. Was this orchestrated by another special interest group?
Yeah, I mean, come on, man, it's orchestrated. This was a powder keg waiting for their opportunity. They were not only were they organized in it, but it was a nice way to kind of slide in there. It's like if you're at a Klan rally, everybody's in a sheet. You all know which person represents. They all represent the same ideology and the same belief. You get a protest, and you can slide a few people in there that look like the protesters,
right? And
they have an agenda. I mean, those cars were pulling up, ready to. As soon as the looting started, those cars were loaded up and they were gone. A lot of that was organized. And of course, if you're there as a peaceful protester and the cops show up, you're just as guilty as the rioter and the looter, and everyone's thrown into the same thing. Now the black person has to defend the idea that, look, I'm not the one painting on this building. This white kid. Now you're getting the race card in there again because there's a white girl painting on a building, and she's over here. The black girl sitting here saying, "Don't do that. They're going to think it's us." You know, so
Yeah.
you have that dynamic going on, and then the black girl's mad at the white girl for painting, and the white girl doesn't even have a skin in the game, except for it's pushing this narrative that these black people are tearing down their own cities. It's adding a lot of confusion. I think we're getting wise to it. We can see it. They're getting exposed.
Nicole?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was about to say. Like, protesters were out peacefully doing things. And they would tell you, there were videos and accounts of people, why is this stack of bricks laid there? It was almost as if people put things out to try to bait people into looting and tearing up buildings and things like that. Now, I will tell you this. What's interesting is that, of course, I'm not somebody who is for any sort of damage to people's properties, because I mean, I get pissed off when somebody steals from me or any kind of shit like that, because I work hard for what I do have. So I'm not for any of that. But what I will tell you is it seems like until you make a ruckus, and that's what some kids have said, until you make a ruckus, nobody listens to you. It's almost like, you know, yes, we may be able to say some of the racism talk has been blown out of proportion, but it needs to be blown out of proportion. We need to be talking about it because the system itself is broken.
Right.
The system makes it set so that, just like you said, Dave, people go to, I mean, went to jail for weed, you know? And I'm like, that shit's legal now. You know, it's like, you can go to California and smoke all you want.
Yeah.
You know, but yet you got, you know, kids who have a permanent record because, you know, like you said, they were recreational or out doing something, trying to make a few bucks. The problem is African Americans are only a small percentage of the mass population. So, like, we need the majority to be talking about it, you know, and we need things to change. We need there to be, like you're saying, better policemen, better schooling for the policemen. But you have to say something. Like, we can talk till we're blue in the face, but if the majority doesn't do something about it, it's never going to change. So while many of you don't experience racism on a day-to-day basis, it still affects the people, like, in your lives, your family, your friends. So we can't win the battle or change the system without the assistance of all Americans.
Yeah, but by doing looting and protesting is one thing. Looting and rioting and burning down buildings and burning down your own buildings, that's not going to help. And the whole Black Lives Matter, that's a cult. That's not the same as black people's lives. If they gave a shit, they'd be in Chicago fucking trying to help people get their lives together. What I'm saying to
it's not a cult. That's bullshit. That is a narrative that that people are buying in. Black Lives Matter is not a cult. It is not.
They're trying to hijack the Democratic Party.
Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even know that Black Lives Matter was an organization. I just thought that Black Lives Matter was like a slogan that people were saying because they were frustrated,
right.
And it just became
That's what I thought, yeah.
So
right, but wait a minute, when they were marching pigs in a
because
blanket,
I said Black Lives Matter doesn't mean I'm a part of this organization or support that organization financially. But I believe that Black Lives Matter and all lives matter.
Exactly. Thank you. All lives matter. Your life matters. Everybody's life. But that's not what they're preaching. They don't care about. If they cared about black people, they would.
Greg, who is they?
The leaders of Black Lives Matter is what I'm saying. Remember, first they were calling for killing cops. They got a lot of cops killed. And then now they're changing because they're trying to become a political party. That's a fact. That they're like Al Sharpton. If somebody, Tricky, if somebody did something to you, another black man did something to you, they wouldn't give a shit. They wouldn't be marching for you. Okay, but if I did something to you, they'd march because they're opportunists like Al Sharpton. You know, all of a sudden Al Sharpton come out. You know.
Nicole, go ahead. Sorry, we didn't hear you, Nicole.
Where are you getting this information? Is this coming from social media? Where are you getting this information?
From them, watching them. All you have to do is watch them, and you hear what they say and what they speak. I believe Black Lives Matter, but I don't believe in the group Black Lives Matter because they don't really give a shit. They're Judas. Don't you understand? You're following Judas. You have to understand that if they gave a shit.
Greg,
Yeah.
Greg, what are you talking about?
Seriously, dude.
Sean, did you
in on
change
that one.
clothes?
I did. I'm actually driving. I told you I had to go to Benihana's, but wait a minute, Greg. You're telling me Black Lives Matter is Judas? What the hell are you smoking right now?
All right, listen to me. What I'm trying
you
to
done
say
your
is,
homework?
I feel the Black Lives Matter is a cult to me. It's not. They're not really for Black lives. They have their own
So they're a
political
group- so
agenda.
they're-
Why do they get mad when you say all lives matter? Like Tricky.
Consider that? What do you mean, like Black Panther?
All lives
Yeah,
No,
matter.
we're not
something-
talking about all lives. We're talking about black people are being systematically killed by bad cops. That's the only reason why we have Black Lives Matter. The same way Colin Kaepernick took a knee, it's because of the police brutality. You guys are twisting the narrative.
No,
Sean, I
don't
think
that.
hold on. I think
Black
Greg
Lives
is trying to
Matter because
differentiate
we're all
between the
getting
slogan and the
But
group.
why do they get mad if you say all
We're
like
getting pissed off because
they're a
bad
political
cops are
party?
killing us.
But they're
Hey,
a
Greg,
political. I
Greg,
agree with you.
we're getting snuffed out. Black people, including me. If that shit comes to my front door, I'm going to be the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement because they're telling you, stop killing our people. That's what the whole freaking movement's about. It's bad cops, not all cops.
Wait, were they telling you that when they were marching, saying pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon? What do we want? Dead cops. You know how many cops there were cops that were killed because of that?
Hey, everybody has it. Listen, everyone has their boiling point. I don't hate cops. I cannot stand bad cops. And
Me
you know,
neither.
when you get into a group scenario where tensions are high, where your voice is not being heard, where you're being ignored, and when you're being shouted down to, and you're calling them something that they aren't, it's like you get in a fight. The next thing you know, we're talking about physiques, and then I'm talking about your mama.
All right, let me ask you a
Everything
question.
gets lost.
If they care about making black people better and having their lives better, why don't they start in Chicago? Why don't they go there? Why don't they go South Central?
Well, no, that's like you saying, why don't we go back to Africa? Come on, Greg. It's
No,
ridiculous.
I don't mean it like
You can't
that.
control the
Realize
narrative.
just everybody that believes Black Lives Matter does not believe that cops should be getting shot.
Okay.
Right.
But
And we believe that all lives matter.
Well, how
we believe
come
that all lives still
Don't
matter?
you understand that the group Black Lives Matter started out marching in New York City, chanting, "Pigs in a blanket, fry my face. We want them dead. Kill cops." There are members of that group that killed cops in the name of Black Lives Matter. They've actually
Greg,
done it in their name.
they're responding to black people that have been killed by cops.
Hold
Greg.
on, Nicole,
can't
go ahead.
do
Let's
that.
let Nicole talk.
You can't do that.
It's
That
reactionary.
doesn't make it right.
Hold
though.
on, Greg.
I still.
Greg,
Yeah.
let's let Nicole talk. Nicole, go ahead.
Black Lives Matter is a 501c3 organization that started in 2013 when Trayvon Martin's killer got off for killing the kid that was walking to the store to buy a fucking candy bar.
But he
That's
wasn't a
how
cop.
it started. And
He was pretending to be one. He's a neighborhood watch.
He wasn't a cop, and he wasn't even white.
He was pretending to be one.
Both.
He was the neighborhood watch.
But Black Lives Matter is not just based on black people getting killed by cops. It's based on black people getting killed. The focus being racism.
I understand that. I'm on your side. Do you think I'm not on your side? I just don't believe in the group Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I didn't believe in the group KKK either.
No, I don't believe in that. I believe that they're similar.
Someone's got to
It's
start the
similar.
movement, Greg. Yeah. You know what? They said the same thing about the Black Panthers. That the Black Panthers, because they were standing up for black people, were some criminal organization. No, they got tired of getting their asses kicked. So, I mean, it doesn't matter if it was Black Lives Matter or Black People Matter. It doesn't matter what the name is. The reason they exist is reactionary. Our people were getting slaughtered. And so we have to come together and focus on the black people being killed by bad cops. That's what it was about.
And keep in mind, Greg, that when people say Black Lives Matter, they're not, saying that all lives don't matter.
True.
How come Black Lives Matter
Greg, what you're seeing is Black Lives Matter started out as a saying because it was apparent apparent that black lives didn't matter. It's apparent that white lives matter because
I agree.
So the apparent situation looked like Black Lives Don't Matter, and a group formed to stand up for the fact that yes, that you guys cops have got to stop killing us.
I agree.
And you're going to have radicals in the Black Lives Matter.
I agree with that.
Yes.
What I'm interested in is from Nicole's perspective as a black woman who might one day be the mother of black children. Okay, in your estimation, what's the sentiment among black women who may be bringing black boys into this world and to be their mothers? What are you going to tell these kids?
Exactly. We're sick of it. The thing is that we've already been taught when I've grown up with two parents in the home. We've always been taught to speak a certain way to cops. If you do this kind of shit, you're going to get in trouble. And it's frightening, to say the least, because we have countless number of people who are doing the right thing who get pulled over for simple traffic violations and they end up dead. So it's every black woman's nightmare, because it's not just our sons, it's our brothers, it's our husbands. And then you've already got the dynamic that they talk about economic disparity among the black community. They talk about how we've got a large majority of black men in jail, which is a moneymaker, because a lot of jails are privatized. So people are putting them in jail to make money off of this.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump changed that, by the way. Donald Trump changed that. You know that, right?
Oh, really?
Yes. Oh, don't even tell me that you think Joe Biden, or what did Obama do? Did he help?
It's bigger than the president, Greg.
This is going to go downhill fast if you start talking politics.
No, but I mean, it's bigger than the president situation. It's bigger than the president.
Let me bring this. Let me jump in here for a second, guys. I want to bring this. I want to bring this full circle to circle back to our bodybuilding connection here. I want to go through the panel one at a time before we finish. I want to see your reaction to, have you experienced racism or seen racism? Because, obviously I'm not going to be a victim of racism, but I want to see, have I seen racism in bodybuilding? Let's start with Shawn Ray, since he's driving right now.
No, I'm 37 years in. I started coming of age when I was 18 years old. If I did, you would have heard me vocalize it. It would be well documented, because I'd be the one. Would you call me at the top of the show the mouth?
Yes.
I'd have been screaming at the top of my lungs. Now, that being said, I've been through the system. I don't look down and see a bunch of black judges judging me. I don't look down and see a lot of black promoters promoting a lot of shows. I mean, we're probably 70% of this industry. We don't run it the way that a lot of the NFL players are talking about. There's a lack of black head coaches, zero ownership. We're not even fighting for that, because I think what we do, like John mentioned earlier, it's not about color. I mean, it's about the iron. But I would like to see more black promoters. I'd like to see more black judges judging. But maybe it's not our thing. You follow me? I mean, there's not a lot of black Olympic swimmers. It's not our thing. A lot of athletes, we're athletes. So when the athletic part is over, promoting shows, judging shows, it may not be our thing. Some of us turn into great trainers, great mentors. But there's a big disparity when it comes down to who's running this industry. And I haven't heard one black person complain that there's no black seniority running it. Why? Because I think in our industry, we'd all like to believe we haven't seen it, which is why we haven't heard about it. And I would have been the loudest one screaming from the top of my lungs about the disparity. Now, you talk to somebody like
Shawn, why aren't you screaming? Why aren't you screaming that? You just laid out a very good case.
My point is, Dave, I don't see it.
You do see it. Hold on, you do see it. You just said it. There's not a lot of black people promoting shows and judging shows.
But it doesn't equate to racism. What I was saying is,
I didn't say it's racist. I just say there's a disparity.
Well, there's a disparity, but you got to have the black athlete want to become a judge. You got to want them to become promoters. You got to assume that they want some stake in the ownership or the running. We don't. It's not there. I haven't seen.
Sure.
Well, you don't know that.
You don't know that. What about this? Let me ask you this. You never touched on this. How about this? What about black cover guys or black girls? Did Linda Murray get the exposure that fucking Corey Everson got?
No, but remember, you got to remember, there's a couple
Ronnie
dynamics.
get the covers?
Remember, Corey Everson was married to the editor-in-chief of Muscle and Fitness.
Okay.
That's a dynamic that all the other females suffered from.
I'm just asking you. I'm playing devil's advocate. Did Jay Cutler get more covers than maybe Ronnie Coleman?
He probably did, but Jay Cutler, even today, is still one of the most successful bodybuilders. But Jay also.
I'm just asking.
Jay also lived here in California, Greg. There's things that you could point to as systemic racism.
I'm not. Listen, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying that that's legit, but I used to hear shit a little bit like that.
Listen, Jay lived here in California. He could drive to Joe Weider's office. He got photo shoots, whereas Ronnie lived in Texas. Maybe photo shoots weren't Ronnie's thing. I think it's an individual.
What about when Robbie competed? Didn't they used to say Robbie didn't smile and he used to scare the shit out of the judges? Yes or no?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, Robbie got his fair share of publicity, but is Robbie the guy trying to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger and get a lot of photo shoots? I don't know. We can't speak for Robbie Robinson.
No,
I believe he thinks he was discriminated against.
Does he really? He does think that, right?
He does think that.
Yeah, because I remember back when they used to say, he had that hair, he was real dark, and he'd stand there and he would never smile. He would pose and they used to say, try to smile and all this shit. I used to hear, whether that's the truth or not. I'm just throwing that at you. It's just a little bit, it's topic here.
You got to go back to who is the owner of the magazines, and if the magazines aren't selling, they're not going to put certain individuals on there. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Because he was scary.
Let's go to John. Let's go to you.
80s, I mean.
John, let's go to you.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I can tell you, when I was senior editor of Muscular Development magazine, we were deciding what bodybuilders to put on the cover. I always went with whoever won. Yep. That's who you put on the cover. You put the guy who won. That's who you put on the cover. Yeah, blacks don't sell magazines. But that's fucking ridiculous. We're a bodybuilding magazine. Bodybuilders sell the magazine. If you have a shitty magazine, you can't blame your lack of sales on who you put on the cover. Because if that were the fact, then, you would just do an analysis of what magazine sells the most. And if there's a picture of a vanilla cake on the cover, then if your object is to sell magazines, you're going to put a fucking vanilla cake on the cover.
John, I was just being devil's advocate. I didn't say that's fact. I was asking.
Because you played that role very well. But in terms of answering the question, I have seen, I don't want to call it racism. I want to call it preference, okay? But preference motivated by a financial element, okay? So if I'm tasked with choosing a magazine cover, I want the magazine cover to sell the magazine, okay? So, but if you gotta put the champion of your genre on the magazine cover. You can't say, okay, this is a magazine about the best bodybuilders in the world, but we're only going to put the 5th place guy on the cover. That's retarded. Okay, you put the winner on, you put the champion on, you put Mr. Olympia on the cover, Miss Olympia.
100%.
Okay, that's what you do. So, I'm sorry, Tricky. I'll shut up 1 second. Shawn made a very, very, very good point about Corey Everson getting the covers in Muscle and Fitness and Flex because her husband was the editor-in-chief. Okay, so there you go. I mean, that's like more nepotism than racism. So anyway, me personally, I have not seen racism to the point where I'm denying you something because you're black. I have not seen that. I have seen.
Now I will say this, and I agree with you, John, on that. I believe the champions should be the ones on the magazines. But I do remember early in my career, and I started late 80s and into the 90s, and I would do photo shoots for different things in the magazine, but never really got an opportunity to do covers. And I do remember in the 90s, a lot of athletes that were white would be able to get covers that weren't champions. Guys like Stan McQuay, I'm going to say, Tito Raymond, Frank Zeppi.
They had a lot of models, right?
Titan. Guy that plays
Shawn Ray.
Yeah. Hey, you didn't have to win to be on the cover, but I got to tell you, the guys that were close to Venice Beach, close to Woodland Hills,
Yeah.
They were right there. You don't know how many photo shoots.
But
I
Shawn,
filled
they
in
fly
for
people out. If they want someone on the cover, they fly you out. Come on.
Well, I'm saying I filled in for a lot of covers.
Dennis Wolf got a lot of covers. He
Chris.
doesn't live. He wasn't living there.
Well, wait a minute. Whoa. There's two dynamics there that are fighting each other. One is post-contest. The other is during the rest of the year. Okay, if you live in Woodland Hills or LA or Venice during the rest of the year, Shawn is right. You're going to fill in. You're going to get a lot of photo shoots.
Oh yeah.
When you're at contest time, we already flew there. We're already there. We got the photographers there. We got everybody there. Well, the problems we used to have, and Tricky, I know this for a fact because we had you scheduled for a photo shoot, that what happens is Weider comes along and says, we're going to shoot you, and you. Well, you already told me you're shooting with us.
Right.
Well, I can't. Weider's shooting me. He's changing my. He's flying me out. He's doing the whole thing. So we had. I mean, that was out of our hands. So we wanted to shoot somebody, but we were knocked out of the running because Weider, had a monopoly on the availability of the talent. So we were pretty much left with whoever's left over. And I don't think that's a fair assessment of saying, well, you predominantly choose white or you predominantly choose black. A lot of times, and I'm going to go back to my original statement. Contest time, we're within a couple of shades, we're all the same color. I don't care who you are. Within a couple of shades, we're all the same color.
Right.
Okay? Contest time. So I think to say that magazine covers, feature articles and whatnot is much more a case of opportunity than having anything to do with
I'm with
color.
John. Just to follow up what you're saying, John, real quick, it
agree.
is opportunity. It's also business. You got to remember, a lot of athletes, they win shows, but they don't know how to even go about getting that cover shot. They don't know who to contact. Right. They don't know when to get it scheduled, and they don't know anyone. So who I mean, for me, who I knew was paramount. What a lot of people don't realize, I only won 2 pro shows in my whole career, but I got all this publicity. It was because of my relationships, who I knew. I was doing the business of bodybuilding and surrounding myself with photographers that I built relationships with. That served me well.
Yeah. Well, I'm not arguing one way or another. I'm just saying, based on my experience, and it stands out in my head, I remember being told by one of the magazines that you don't see as many black people on the covers because the magazines don't sell as well. So back during that era, that was what I remember being told. How true that is one or another, I don't know. But I do know that I was told that. Yeah. And then back to the question that Dave originally asked, I do want to say that from a bodybuilding fitness standpoint, I think that you don't see it as much outside of, you can go to certain events. And I want to say I still have experienced over the years certain groups of people being together and you might hear the N word. I've experienced that throughout my life. I didn't mention that earlier when we were talking about racism. I have heard that in the community. That said, I don't think that you see racism in our sport where it affects, scores and who places where and those types of things. One thing I do think that needs to change from the disparity standpoint, Shawn mentioned being black as head judges. Now, with that said, and we touch bases on that, I wanted to go back really quick just to say, Dave, question that John asked Nicole about having black children. I have 3 black sons, and it scares me to death. My oldest one is now 18, about to head to college. It scares me to death every time they leave the house. I'm worried about, whether they're going to come home safe. I've talked to them about how to try to handle and respond and react if they ever have a situation with police officers, as far as being cooperative. But if you notice what we've seen here of recent and over the years, it's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because most recent with George Floyd, he complied from beginning to end, and he still ended up dead. So,
that was horrible.
Back to John's questions, what do you tell your kids? What do you tell your sons? It's hard to say. I mean, I still don't know to the point. It's a scary thought.
You know what I would tell my son if I was you, Tricky? I would tell him take the police test and become a police officer.
Yeah.
No, I'm being serious. What's bad about that? That's how change starts.
I don't know.
That's how change starts.
You know what, Nicole? Final word.
Listen, it's great. We're having this conversation. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you guys really, having an honest talk about it. I just hope that people will take this seriously and do something about it. When you are in the room and there's no diversity in the room, if you could make sure that somebody is not dropping the N word, or that you open the door and if you're in charge of a magazine and you get a resume and you can't read the person's name, or you assume the person is black, give them an opportunity.
Yeah.
That is the hidden racism that happens all the time. You just hire your friend and it's your white neighbor or your buddy down the street. But you could probably benefit from having someone of a different race in your circle, other than just us bodybuilders. Because trust me, the ones that have pushed past so many other, just really, we pushed past the ceiling. The ones that are in your circle are elite. We're pretty badass. That's why you know us, okay? But we want you to get to know regular folks. So on a natural, we have more of a even playing field when it comes down to what's happening and what's not.
Well, I just want to wrap this up. I wanted to say personally, I have heard racist comments by people in our sport, but I don't think it has ever affected a single placing. I think the placings and the judging is very non-racist. I think, however, the promotion of the sport, because it involves making money, there's definitely a skew there that I see in terms of who's used for marketing what, but that's business. So I don't know if you could actually say that's racist as much as it is about business and statistics.
Dave, come on. We work for the same magazine. What were the #1 selling magazine covers?
Yeah.
The ones with girls with big tits on the cover. That's
no, it's a marketing certainty, yeah. So
I remember that. I remember Lee get mad.
No bodybuilders at all.
No,
it was only the girls
that.
with the big tits.
I think, John, I think Nicole, just to wrap it up, I think Nicole nailed it.
Yeah.
It's diversity. That's the word. Diversity. If it's not in the room, somebody's got to be that voice of reason. But in bodybuilding, the reason why we're all able to move, Jews, blacks, Koreans, Russians, Germans, all walks, is because we are a very diverse group with that one commonality of fitness that draws us all together. And in that, nobody's really even talking religion or politics. We're talking the language of fitness. Yep. And that's why, it's hard for me to find those instances where racism has a place to rear its ugly head. It's not going to rear its ugly head in the gym or backstage at a competition. So, the place I see it is now on social media, because you can hide behind that shit.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
But I'm proud to say I'm a bodybuilder. I'm still in this community because this is the community that I can go to where I don't have to worry about being judged in a way that I'm a black person. I'm a person.
Well, and I think
that's what I said at the beginning about you, Shawn. I love you, man. And I remember you calling me before I even got fired. You kind of warned me shit and everything. You've always looked out for me, and you never hear a bad word from me, bro, about you. I love you.
You want to hear a bad word about me?
He probably got you fired and took your salary, though, Greg. So sorry.
What's that?
I said he probably got you fired and took your salary, but that's okay.
No,
he did give you the heads up on it.
He called me up before.
I will say that I'm very proud, though, to have you guys representing our sport, because I think that it adds a level of maturity, it adds a level of professionalism, and I think it helps depict our sport and carry it into the next decade, the next 2 decades, with a level of something that we can be proud of. And I think that that's why this discussion was so good. And I want to thank Tricky and Nicole for bringing it up to me, Shawn for joining us, of course, Greg and John for throwing in their opinion. And hopefully we can do future panels like this, because I think it's these topics that need to be aired so that we can have our community come together and stand united against racism, against discrimination, and against the atrocities that we see, some people, not all cops, because I know a lot of great cops, some cops perpetrating on our society. For now, though, I'm Dave Palumbo for another installment of Iron Debate. We'll see you next time.
Tricky and Nicole, God bless you both.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Shawn,
Great,
you know you got my love
great
always.
discussion. I really appreciate it. A long show, but really good. Good stuff.